And bonjour. Welcome to the LARVOL Onco podcast. We're going to talk about NMA, network meta-analysis with Judith Perez. We build on our LARVOL CLIN platform a new functionality that is amazing. And Judith built it, and she's going to talk about it. Before that, a quick infomercial. You're listening to the LARVOL CLIN Build in Public podcast. So once a week, we get you in the kitchen essentially of our software development effort to build the most amazing. That's our goal, certainly. A cancer data platform. LARVOL CLIN, think about it as a Wikipedia or the Bloomberg with AI on top of clinical trial outcome data. And we're building and adding new feature all the time. Judith Perez is in charge of our AI effort. And as part of that, she built a new feature. It's a NMA, network meta-analysis. And it's really, really special. So as you listen to it first, if you want to support us, well, you might want to wait a little bit before liking it. But at some point in this podcast, like, subscribe, and also comment, ask us questions. We are live, so we'd love to engage with your questions and or comments as you see this podcast. Judith, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bruno. Always happy to join. Okay.
So you're going to start in just a second. Let me just say my layperson understanding what a network meta-analysis is, and then it's going to be mostly you. I'll try not to interrupt too much. When I learned about network meta-analysis, it was explained to me the following way. In a meta-analysis, you compare different trials. Okay, and these trials needs to be randomized between two arms that are comparable, right? So intervention versus control. It needs to be kind of the same thing on both sides to be comparable. In network meta-analysis, it doesn't. Because if you say, I don't know, Pete is greater than Paul, or Pete is better than Paul is better than Dennis, okay, then Pete is better than Dennis. So we do indirect comparison of efficacy of cancer drugs. Back to you.
Yes, that's correct, Bruno. So we are going to be attempting to infer some indirect evidence out of direct evidence. So the evidence that we have from clinical trials, it's going to be drawing some inference and conclusions that we get for other tests that have not been conducted on a clinical trial. But let's get to it to see an example on how this works. So this is a new tab, so a new feature that we have included in our CLIN platform. We have in here network meta-analysis tab. And to begin with, you would be typically applying some filters to select some data that you want to evaluate. In this case, I'm going to be making a network meta-analysis on non-small cell lung cancer.
As you do that, I want to make one more comment.
Sure.
There are, of course, network meta-analysis packages out there, or Shiny, various statistical software. In our case, we actually very, very different, because normally if you want to do a network meta-analysis, you need to find the data. It's a ton of work. It's a lot of work to select, clean up the data. In our case, we essentially embedded the software and the data. The data, because of course CLIN is a data platform, is already there. In other words, you can do a meta-analysis in minutes if you want to select carefully your trial, a little bit longer, of course, instead of days or weeks. That's a difference. Back to you.
Correct. Indeed, as you were pointing out, we are going to be leveraging all the data that we have structured during all these years and that we are currently up to date, adding all the new data that is being released and getting all that hazard ratio data that it's being published to populate that network meta-analysis. As you were saying, in a couple of clicks, you can get out your network meta-analysis out of the study that you are interested in. So let's say, so we need to first select the hazard ratio data that we have already processed at LARVOL. And in there, you have the dashboard of all trials that you can select from. You would be selecting there the hazard ratio data. So for example, this case, like you would be checking out all the boxes, all the different boxes from the dropdown that you're interested in. And then Like in here, a couple of tips would be that you are interested in looking for the same treatment across different trials. So you would be selecting that as the reference treatment, as well as having the same endpoint across all the different trials. So either all PFS, all OS. Okay. So once that's set, you will be selecting all those hazard ratio data, selecting afterwards a reference treatment from the dropdown. This dropdown is populated from the selection that you have already made. And to that end, indeed, I already prepared a pre-selection of all the data to run this network meta-analysis on many more trials. So let's get to that. If you see checkout, this is a data preview of already some trials that I have selected and pre-populated into our network meta-analysis. So first of all, we have a data preview of that data selection with the trials, the regimen 1 to arm 1, the end size, arm 2 end size, and the current known hazard ratio data that you have pre-selected from that list. Then we get into a comparison summary. In here, we would be seeing the features that characterize that data that we have selected. So we have the number of interventions, the number of studies, the total number of patients that we've got in that network, the total pairwise comparisons, as well as the number of term studies, and a couple more data. So it's more a descriptive summary. Now let's get to what we are mostly interested in, that is that network plot. So how is the data selection looking like? So in here, we are seeing the different studies that have been selected. We have the regimens as the nodes, and the edges would be the studies that connect those regimens. So there's a study that is evaluating erlotinib against gefitinib. Indeed, 2 trials. And erlotinib to hilotrip, it would be 1 trial. Then the node of those regimens would be as big as the number of patients that are in that that evaluate that regimen. Okay. In right below, we have even a summary of the number of patients across the different treatments. Besides this, some extra features that we have added is that you can download the network plot that you have created, as well as there's a small explanation of what we are looking at right at the very bottom of each tab. Okay, so far we can see that we have quite a connected network, but what's interesting is that we will be inferring data, well, hazard ratio data from the knowledge from this direct evidence to those connections that have not been yet established. So there let's go to the forest plot, which is the next tab. In here, as we have selected as reference treatment, in my case, it would have been gefitinib. We have hazard ratio data comparing docetaxel to gefitinib as a reference, gemcitabine with gefitinib as reference, and so on. We can say from here that docetaxel, gemcitabine not that much, but docetaxel for sure it's better than gefitinib in this case from the network meta-analysis that we have and studies that we have already selected. Okay. In contrast, for example, erlotinib and hilotrip are doing worse than gefitinib, since they are crossing the 1 hazard ratio point. If we move on, we have more features, such as the net split. In here, as I was telling at the very beginning, we can evaluate direct evidence as well as the indirect evidence. So let's check out some comparisons in here. For example, erlotinib and gefitinib. We are having estimates from direct evidence. So this is data that hazard ratio data that we know, but we are also able to have indirect evidence. So estimates from indirect connection that have not been evaluated. So there we have also right below the network estimate. This network estimate would be evaluating if there's consistency between the direct and indirect evidence and estimate. This means whether they are overlapping or not. In this case, they are overlapping. This means that it's consistent. Otherwise, the network meta-analysis would not have been consistent. And we need to then select other trials because the conclusions that can be drawn from there wouldn't be valid. Okay, and so in this net split, we can see then the direct estimate, the indirect estimate, as well as the network estimate per each pairwise comparison. Moving to the next tabs, this is a very interesting one. So we would be having the regimen of the ranks. So the regimen ranks, sorry. So we would be having a ranking from the best to the worst treatment from the selection that we have made based on the studies that we are evaluating. In this case, docetaxel would have been the in 99% cases the best treatment compared to hilotrip, which would have been the worst. Okay. If we continue to evaluate what is in there, well, yes, it's the NMA matrix. In here, we are having a similar approach to what we are seeing in NetSplit, but with a different flavor, because we can evaluate direct evidence and compare it to the network effects. What we call out as network effects would be the direct plus indirect evidence. And in here, we would be reading on the top side, the direct evidence, so the knowledge that we already draw from the existing trials, and at the bottom of the diagonal, we would be having the network evidence. So it's the direct evidence knowledge that we have plus indirect, so what we are inferring from the current knowledge. Okay, so for example, here, docetaxel hepatinib, we have 0.36 as a ratio, and so on. This would have been the network effects. Finally, an interesting tab that we have is the funnel plot. In here, we are evaluating the publication bias. So the studies that we have selected, how well they are, if there's any that it's outside of this triangle, we would have said, and it's not symmetric, we would have said that this is a biased study and we may consider omitting it. And to that, if we go back to the network plot, in here, let's say that there's a study that you no longer want to consider there, you can even exclude it live and apply the exclusions. And on the right-hand side, you would be seeing the updated network meta-analysis. Okay. So this is the tool that we have been developing indeed with Darko Medin, which has helped us with all the biostats that it's behind this new feature in CLIN. So far, we would love to hear your inputs and your thoughts on how is it working. Any feedback would be really appreciated. We are thinking about making also like moving ahead and having consolidation of treatments, and even being able to at some point automatize data selection. So keep the eye out, because new things are even coming up in here.
Yes. Couple of comments, and I want to echo your acknowledgement of our biostatistician partner, Darko Medin, and he's been really working with you to build that exciting feature of LARVOL CLIN. Now, LARVOL CLIN has a version that is available for free, and we will be very happy if you comment or if you reach out to us to give you access to LARVOL CLIN and to the NMA feature on a pilot basis for free, and we would love your feedback on it. So please reach out to Judith or to me, and we would love to do that for you. I'm not a biostatistician, so I understand half of what you said. But that's okay. A lot of people listening have more technical knowledge. But I loved everything I understood, and I love everything I did not understand, and that's okay. It was music to my ear, right? And that's absolutely fine. Now, I love controversy, and I know there's a controversy between, I don't know, Cal versus Stanford. There's a controversy between I don't know, pizza versus pineapple. And there's a controversy between, in biostatistics, frequentists, these guys or gals, and Bayesians.
Mm-hmm.
gals and guys, right? Now, I understand there are two ways
Mm-hmm.
to do an NMA. Now, which
Yes.
way is
Right now,
our NMA?
yes. Our way right now it's frequentist.
All right. So
Uh, mhm,
if there are some Bayesians listening to us, they gotta be a little upset because that's
mhm,
a Betamax versus VHS. That's a big
mhm.
thing, right? Um,
We've
so
gone. Mhm.
are we going to move Bayesian later on or stay frequentist? I don't want even to explain what that is for people who are just
Yeah,
listening to it without being biostatisticians, but it's a big deal.
yes, it is because we need to consider priors. Like, would we like omit them from the analysis? Would users should like input them? Like, that's something that is still in the
Okay.
plate to be discussed.
All right. I was trying to create a real controversy here. So we frequentist and we
Yes, for
probably
now.
not going to change. And if you hate us for that, well, that's what it is. That's what it is. So Judith, thank you very, very much.
Thank you,
Again,
Bruno.
follow us, like, now that you listen to Judith, like what she said, all right, especially if you understood everything, you have to like, because these are pretty advanced topics. And we'll find you again next week for another episode of this building public LARVOL CLIN podcast. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.